Welcome everybody, this is Roland. I'm broadcasting from Utrecht and receiving you in Utrecht, Holland. And
this is Alexey. I'm broadcasting from Munich, Germany. Germany, as Germans say. Germany. And yeah, so thanks for coming. It's late evening. Some people say it's hard to make it because of the family, but I think it's a good chance to escape from a family for some of us and pretend like we're discussing something important. Yeah. All right. So basically, we have prepared something on the mirror board just to keep us with Roland going with the storyline, and we will be sharing some parts of the board to keep us focused. So basically, there will be two parts of today. We will share with you some of our discoveries because, like, we've basically have been working on Org Topologies for more than a year now, and it doesn't feel like we are creating it. It feels like we are discovering it. It seems like it's there somewhere in the universe, and we, just discovering it like I don't know, like a table of chemical elements or something like that. And we would like to share with you some of our discoveries, and we didn't find a better way to do it than to start from the beginning. So we're gonna tell you the story of how we discovered Org Topologies, and hopefully you will learn something exciting. And at any moment of time, please interrupt, ask questions, comment out. Yeah, it's not a presentation, it's just a friendly discussion we are having with you guys. And then if you feel like working a little bit in groups or together in one group, if we're too little, then we would like to collect from you some of your stories and maybe also insights, right? All good?
yeah, all good. And there's no reason to be scared about that. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to work. I thought we were just gonna sit back and relax and listen. If you want to sit back and relax and listen, then please do so.
Yes.
It's not a problem at all. By the time that it's that we are expecting things from you to be active or whatever, we will make that very clear and ask you very concise, concrete things. And then, hopefully you got so much energy from all the information that you got before that you can't wait for that moment. But we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah. So we plan like maybe 30-40 minutes of us talking more than you. But again, feel free to jump in, interrupt. So to start from the very beginning, like how it all started. And it's not just to tell you a story and to show you how cool we are. We just really didn't find a better way to share with you our insights than just to tell you the story of creating, or rather discovering, Org Topologies. So I will start, yes, and then Roland will join me at some point. Yeah.
I think it's also, you're saying we didn't know any other way to do it. We started the Slack channel to start creating, like information exchange, which was a little bit disappointing, but yeah, we know how things go. I'm also busy with other things, and then, the Slack channel. So I understand, I fully understand. And this is a way, an experiment to see, maybe we should do it more like, interactive, showing up, see how many people are interested in listening to our story, and then ask questions about it. And for us, it's a very nice way to iterate and look back and think again on all the beautiful stuff that we've discovered. And hopefully, any moment in time when you think, oh, but I didn't know that, could you explain a little bit more? Please feel free to interrupt us. All right, let's go.
Yeah, so basically it all started with me talking to my clients, and about 2 years ago, and basically I have been working with a client. I had been working with a client for several years who were basically focusing very much on creating what they call agile teams. And then my company, Scrum Ukraine, were helping them with Scrum Masters to make those teams work. But then after a couple of years of working with them, I was really trying to help them understand that teams is not all that you should focus on. And I couldn't find any other way to explain it than to draw basically some kind of a team maturity model, going from individual work to group work to somewhat cross-functional work to super cool teamwork. And this was a line, and basically a line of maturity, right? And we were helping that company, I think, quite nicely to go from very much command and control individual work to start experimenting with teams. And a few years later, they have much more teams than before, but still they think only about this one axis. And recently, I also done some kind of a survey in our Telegram channel, mainly in Eastern European companies or Eastern European teams, most of them who actually work for some of the Western companies. So I think this survey might give a pretty much good representation of what's happening. So basically, when you ask how do you run sprints, and this survey has been run within an agile community, so basically people know about different approaches, but 74% say teams select work from team level backlogs. And then when you ask how do you run your refinements of the backlog, again around 70% say they do it on team by team basis. So basically teams only know what they need to know, and they don't bother knowing what other teams will be working on. And the last question I asked how the product owner role was organized, and surprisingly the number were a bit more interesting, because it's only half had a product owner per team, which is not really consistent with the previous answer. So I didn't know how to treat this information, but still the majority of the companies, of the teams, they use Agile at the team level. Anybody has a good idea how to interpret this data differently? Or why the last question is a little bit off in terms of numbers comparing to the first ones? So how can you,
Yeah, the 19% all for all, maybe does that explain it? What does that mean, all for all?
One product owner, this was my actually translation from Russian Ukrainian. So the last option was here that it's a single product owner for all the teams.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, thank you.
One per product owner for all. But basically, it still proves the point that a lot of teams and companies think just about one direction, and then
Yeah, which is not very strange. If you look at what the industry standard is, there is this very hard belief, we've read the Scrum Guide and that's what we've implemented. One team, one product owner, one backlog, regardless of what framework that we put on top of that. Isn't that the way we do Scrum? So this belief is very hard to eradicate almost, right? It's like an enormous step to think further than having one team, one product owner, one backlog.
Simon?
And then horizontally, as we make this better, like Alexey was saying, working with clients, and I did the same thing, and probably you did as well as you're trying to make your team better by adding more capabilities and making them perform better as a team. But you will run into, as your team grows and gets more mature, I've learned in my role as a Scrum Master that once my team was running fine and I was able to reduce dependencies, then I started to have more problems, see problems around the team that were kind of getting my attention. And that's I think also the path that we went through with Alexey, is to see that we need another dimension, more than just capabilities of the team, to focus on, to really make a change that has impact. Because just focusing on the team is not the answer. That's not enough. We need more.
And I
think there was a question in the chat.
Yeah, Simone is also raising a hand.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight one more option. So from my experience also, we have sometimes half product owner per team. So product owner is sharing the role of Scrum Master, or like 50% doing the work inside the team. So like this.
Sure. But yeah, it still proves the point, right? It's a very much team focus. So we've added this second axis to help our clients understand that there are other, basically at least one more dimension than just focusing on the teams. And that's how basically this org topologies thing emerged. You guys understand it, so we're not gonna spend a lot of time on this basic stuff, because more insights were happening later on when we actually trying to name those axes. It seems so simple, but if you've been following our work, you probably think we have released a lot of different versions, and on different articles we use different namings for the axes, because we really used a lot of different namings for the axis. We couldn't settle on something that was 100% correct. So level of value consolidation was something we started on the y-axis, and then when we presented at the last camp in Croatia in summer, Basvodi take us to beer after the talk and said he liked it and he didn't like it, like he would always say. And then he said, seems like your vertical axis is the scope of the backlog, what's in the backlog. And that became something we started to think a lot. And then I influence Roland. I very much like the agile fluency model. I like it and I don't like it. I like it because it's so simple. You know, the model from Diana Larsen and Josh Shore, but it's too abstract, not too detailed. That's why I don't like it. But I like the word fluency. So we started to play with the word fluency, and the vertical axis became the fluency at working with the whole product. And then we thought working not enough, you also need to learn to work on the whole product. So then we try to incorporate fluency at learning to work. And then we started to make some jokes at the conferences that we're looking for the longest names for the axis, because you cannot really create longer names than the one we had. But it was still kind of correct, because this was what we wanted to communicate with the names. And then it became a breadth of shared customer focus, and the x-axis became the depth, so breadth and the depth. But we couldn't really stop renaming. And then eventually we thought, alignment and autonomy, those seem like nice names that also fit. But then if you think deeper, yes, you can find some exception. For example, with alignment, yes, you would typically expect that alignment would grow when you're thinking not about just one team, but many teams working together. But what does it mean to have an alignment? When you're doing safe, right, and you collect your component teams on a PI planning event, you create alignment. I think you do. You create alignment on how fucked we are, basically, as an organization, how many dependencies we have. But does it really create fluency at working across the whole product? Probably not, because you hadn't changed the structure of teams. So all of the names were correct, but still wrong at the same time. That's why we were keeping looking for something else. And I'm sure if we'll now open some brainstorm with you, we'll come up with 10 more names. Roland.
Yeah. So you started off by remembering us that we talked with Basvodi from Les about the naming of the vertical axis. Mm-hmm. Actually, we also had the discussion on how much this looks like the feature team adoption map. Because some people went like, oh, it's like feature team adoption map. And already when you look at the feature team adoption map, we found that, because we studied that thing as well. And I don't know if you remember, on the horizontal axis, there is this capability of the teams as well. You know, how much can they deliver done? And the vertical axis is then the breadth of the product. How much systems do they understand? How much products do they know how to handle? And I don't know if you've ever tried to use the feature team adoption map in a real life situation, but it can become very gray and very fuzzy on what belongs to the horizontal or the vertical axis. That kind of helped us to see that we needed, well, yes, it has to do with value and product on the vertical axis, but whatever we did, whatever new name we found for the vertical axis, systemically, it's not like a very clear distinction of things that are not related. They are related because that's why they need to be together on one graph. So it still is a challenge, I think.
Yeah, but our probably first insight that I'd like to share with you is that all of the names, maybe none of them is correct, is right, but they all make sense as indicators. So as you're going up, as you start thinking not about just one team, but of team of teams, as we call it, as a broader context for the product development in an organization, you would expect most of these things to increase, right? You would expect that there would be some level of consolidation, some level of value consolidation, like going from backlogs at the user story level to backlogs at some broader level, like customer journeys or maybe even business goals. You would expect the teams will be learning broader aspects of the product. So these things were right because we still believe you can use them as indicators of your progress along these two axes. But still, none of them was winning if you compare, because we would always find some exception. And our goal was to generalize the model so that it can be used also by non-IT guys and hopefully also outside of software development.
Yeah, and I think our mental model, we constantly run into the limitation of our own mental model. And I think at this part, for finding the correct vertical axis, I think we were kind of, let's face it, Nieberg is in there, right? Autonomy versus alignment. The feature team adoption map is in there. The idea of, oh, if horizontal is teams, then vertical is probably value, so product, right?
Yeah,
and
edge of fluency. So we keep each. So yeah, we realized we are anchored by so many models and so many frameworks. So basically, it's I mean, what do you expect from two consultants trying to create?
Well, what you just said, Alexey, was actually pretty valuable. He said alignment was not such a very good, strong idea, because you could also have a big PI planning and use that as that simple.
I think your connection, Roland, is teaching a little bit. We knew this would happen. He just moved to a new house and he's still trying to make it work. I think he'll switch to a mobile connection.
Just continue. Yeah.
Roland, it's time for you to switch to the mobile. And when you're back, continue. Yeah. So that was the fight for the naming. But then after we settled on, at some point, fluency in delivering single customer value item for the horizontal one, basically how good a team can be at taking something valuable in the eyes of a customer and doing this. And the vertical would be fluency in learning the whole product, basically how much teams learn and work together. After we settled on these names for a while, we started to look in the middle, not on the axis anymore, but what's inside, and we realized, oh, now we have this 4x4 matrix. Let's fill it in. And we really said for many hours together and try to remember all kinds of companies and clients we worked with, and telling each other stories, like, and then trying to classify those companies. And apparently we couldn't find all the examples, but we found some very typical examples that we both yeah, I know. And even you could stop each other, you could interrupt each other and continue basically the story, because those stories were so archetypical, you can say. And then Roland came up with a name of archetypes. These are archetypes. These are very, stereotypical organizations. Probably they don't really exist as in this very clear form, but why one would be a component development with narrow specialized teams optimizing for narrow code ownership, and probably what it means to work in such company, and you could anticipate and guess all kinds of problems this company, challenges the company has.
Am I back on track again? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I still remember that we had, well, not a fight, but a good discussion, because Alexey didn't want to have the Ys on the map initially. He said, "Oh, that's not agile. I don't want to have non-agile stuff on the map," which is, what ultimately
so like
we are
these
trying
guys
to,
are not really agile organization. And
No.
do we include them, or do we, cut the metrics off? Yeah.
But I think that we came to the conclusion and the insights that maybe companies that are still stuck in Y0, they are still there, and they especially they need a map like this to understand what is out there and how they can move into a better place, right? That there are options for them. So I think it's very valuable. It's very valuable to serve those people, to try to improve their organization.
We never had a goal to just do it like, have a classification of agile organization. We actually wanted to move away from this dualism, agile, non-agile, and basically just try to classify clients for ourselves so we can be better at, knowing the problems and helping them. But once we started to do that, we identified these 7 archetypes, and this became like the, what you can call it, body of knowledge of these org topologies. And then we came up with the name Org Topologies, also to play a little bit with the guys from Team Topologies, who we believe think still only about one horizontal axis, and we are smarter than that. Whatever, but I really hate their work, actually, I have to say, because it's very much limiting, I think. But it's not the topic of this webinar. And then we put these videos out, and we started to use them at conferences where we would just go and explain all those archetypes. And one interesting insight came then when we started to use those boxes, A1, B3, whatever, for ourselves, and then using them with our clients at the conference talks. People would come to us and say, "Hey, I'm in A2 and my company really wants to go to B2. How do I do it?" So we really quickly realized, I will zoom in so maybe you can read if you haven't seen that before. We've realized that people actually use this as a language to communicate their org design. And we thought, okay, it's helpful, because now if you say I'm A2 and I'm going B2, just by saying this 4 symbols, letters, right, you've communicated a lot of information that otherwise I don't know how you would communicate.
And isn't that much more valuable, because people start thinking again about the true things that matter, the real things that matter, to understand what drives organizational design and what makes it good or bad in their context.
Exactly. Yeah.
Instead of saying, yeah, we do safe. Well, what kind of safe? I mean, Alexey, we've got safe mapping.
Right.
Or I'm in the...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So we then started to map different frameworks just for fun. Basically, we've I don't have a picture of Safe, but we've mapped team topologies, and we've concluded there somewhere here as much as we understand the idea. Then we mapped Spotify, so-called Spotify model of tribes and squads, and we realized it spans in this part. It is in this part of the map, but most companies will think they are way higher on the map than actually they are. Because my experience with the Spotify model, for example, is that despite the fact that it puts a lot of stress on the tribes, which would be a vertical move on the map, right? Like putting teams together. When you go to a company and actually see how teams work, every team would eventually still have a team level backlog and a team level product owner within a tribe. So it looks fancy, but you are very much on the low side of the map still.
So by doing this, we came to realize that actually our map can help people to become much more specific about their context.
Exactly.
Okay, so the company says we're doing safe. And then by using the map, you can say, yeah, my department or my release train is actually a Y1 kind of safe implementation, because we've got these component teams. We don't have very advanced teams that do end-to-end delivery. And then it becomes much more valuable to talk about where you are and where you want to go to, not only at a company level, but also at a smaller, fine-grained view of your company. You can see all these areas that are organized in a certain way up until a certain level, and you can determine what they will need in their contexts within the organization to all move into the same direction and to maybe acquire the same level of adaptivity.
Yeah, so when you map anything like Safe or even Less or Spotify, our insight, and that we like to share with you, that it's pretty obvious from these images that those things do not reside in one of the boxes. They span multiple boxes, which means, as Roland had just said, when somebody says, hey, we're doing Safe, doesn't really mean much. Would you agree on that, guys? Because it might actually mean a lot of different safes. So we making a joke that there are 50 shades of Safe and 50 shapes of Spotify, because eventually you need to know much more details to know what they mean by safe. Do they manage dependencies of component teams? One type of safe, or they really try to remove dependencies by making better teams and letting them self-manage, which also can be done in safe, right? So it doesn't really make sense to use frameworks anymore. And then basically we said, oh, this thing we're building is actually liberating. Because, and we both shared that observation with Roland, is that there are lots of talks about frameworks. We call it a human framework dependency syndrome, HFDS, that, like the too much reliance on frameworks. But then when you go and ask those companies, so, but what do you actually want to be when you grow up, kind of, they don't know what to tell you. But now when you have this map, you can point your finger, and most of people can use the finger to point to a box and say, I think I'm here and I think we want to go there. And now our next realization was, okay, this is a map. This is not just a matrix, this is a map, and you can use it to navigate on your agile transformation journey, Roland.
And you were shortly touching upon team topologies, and then org topologies being a layer, adding a dimension to that. If you look at what, as far as I know, org topologies, it's building blocks, and you can label a team saying, well, this team is a typical platform team. You mean
team topologies? You just
team topologies. Yes, apologize. So this is a typical platform team. Now that's all fine. It's great if you can be so specific and knowing what kind of team you have. What we think is important, that once you know that something is, for instance, a platform team, you can ask yourself the question, is that a good thing? Do I want it to stay like that? Or is it something that I want to move away from? And that's where the map comes in, right? That's where we start showing that things are dynamic, because what we believe, and that's where we are, grow beyond, I think, things like team topologies, is that we really want to focus on helping the people to navigate their journey towards perfection.
Right. So basically every method or framework we know, except for less, I think if you implement it, you will just stay and be locked in some kind of a place on a map without having, an ongoing journey. There will be no higher state of perfection that you will be trying to acquire. That's why we like less so much, that less is not just a framework, but a journey to some kind of high perfection state. And speaking of less, right, we've realized at some point we are so much anchored with less because we like it so much, and we both, less friendly trainers and coaches, and we know each other from less community, I guess. So we've realized basically, like, where would you put less on the map? And we've come to this conclusion: you would put it on the top right. And then we would talk to some bright people, and they would say, we don't like less because it sounds very old-fashioned. For example, a very bright guy from Crisp, who also worked at Spotify over beers in Warsaw, he said to us, I understand, he said, this adaptivity and all that, but he says less to him is a very old model method where you still rely on one, single ringable neck or the product owner and one backlog. And he said, at Spotify we do cool stuff, but we don't have it. And he said then a very painful thing. He said, your Org Topologies thing seems like to be a maturity model towards less. And we're like, yes, that's probably right. True, because that's how we started.
So that was a very good question.
Yeah, that was a very good,
and it was a very painful moment where we we couldn't. We had to think further than that. So what initially, when we started to define that perfection goal, the perfect adaptive organization, we had less in mind, but we also knew that this was like a periodic table, and that we would need to have that openness in our minds to discover new forms of organizational design that we didn't see before, and that might go beyond less. And when, over beers and smoking weed, no, we didn't smoke weed over this. We just were so bright. We did this during coffee in 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We kind of said, like, what would happen if, if there would be something that would go beyond less, then that would have to do something with, the people that create the product are also the people that use the product. That would kind of melt together. But it was more like a theoretical, philosophical perfection vision at that point in time.
It's also what John is just writing as a comment in chat, that it's, John, if you like, you can comment on that yourself. This product versus services versus jobs to be done.
Yeah, it might also help as well with the perception that the end game is less with Org Topologies, because maybe there's a level beyond that, which is where we're being really adaptive to customer jobs. Because what happens with in some product groups, you have a great idea. I think Halo, remember there was a UK ride-hailing app called Halo. I'm not sure if it's still around, and it was used by the London taxi drivers, and you could make a payment and all that kind of cool stuff. And I'm pretty sure someone would have went to someone in Halo and said, why don't we just enable this for all drivers and not just officially licensed taxi drivers, and it would have been dismissed because it wasn't part of their agenda, if you like. And in fairness to Uber, the customer job, and I'm not supporting the framework, by the way, and it's more the idea of there's some job that a customer needs doing, and it might not suit the product group's agenda. It might actually be some brand new initiative that we need to go into, and we need to be adaptive enough that we can swivel into that without being stuck with our. We don't want to be like Google yesterday. Do you know what I mean? Kind of getting
nailing
disrupted.
it.
Yeah.
True innovation will come from the user and the opportunities we see in it.
Yeah.
Nowhere else.
Yeah. And as you know, LS is very much focused on this product definition thing, which sometimes I find hard with my clients to actually define what the product is, but service or customer need or customer journey might be a better way at that. So we were very much anchored with LS and the product, and for quite some time. And then when we cooled down a bit and we put LS aside, we realized with Roland, okay, LS is a set of nice practices, guides, principles that probably are very much helpful to make this move, this diagonal move on the map. But we hope it's not the only one.
Can you scroll up? Because actually what we saw, if you scroll up, just one of them, and just enlarge one of the graphs a little bit.
Sure.
Actually, the main practice that we were focusing on was the consolidation of the product backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But that's just maybe a practice that you could do to, create alignment between teams to make sure that people know what to do, what to build. And
definitely, if you have less backlogs in the company, I don't necessarily mean one, but fewer. Or you would expect teams to know broader, customer the domain, and work also broader on the product, whatever you define.
So more adaptive.
Yeah. So one backlog or less backlogs and less product owners, these practices are definitely taking you somewhere on the map. But we really would like to abstract ourselves, and still this is a challenge for us from less, because that's probably it's a very well described how we do it in less, and we're still looking and hunting, and maybe you guys will help us today, to find some more practices that can move an organization towards this path. If you look into coordination practices in LS, like all of them are how to make teams, collaborate and coordinate in a decentralized way. Pretty much all about that. But then Roland had experience with Obeya, and then we know lots of companies use OKRs. Some of them use OKRs, some of them abuse or misuse OKRs, but I think looking at the book and at the method itself, it's a way to increase alignment and consolidation and focus on the broader value. And those things are, of course, out of less. So we hope that there are more of these practices that we can discover.
Portfolio management?
Some kind of a healthy portfolio management, right, would be also here. And so what we're trying to build eventually, we're trying to build an open system. Like LS, it's a very much closed system. It's been created by two guys who you well know, and they're brilliant minds, but we don't feel it's very much open for contribution. It's like a done work, kind of, although they update the website. So we're not criticizing them. We're not trying to be cooler than them, but we just realized we're not so bright with Roland as those two guys, so we just need to build a more open system where people like you guys can help contribute, and keep finding practices that help us move elsewhere. And like a year ago, I was coaching a company on a less transformation, and we discovered this DORA metrics from DevOps community. These 4 metrics that I think are very nice metrics to be indicators on your horizontal move. Maybe you can also use them not only for the horizontal move, but also for the vertical or the diagonal move too. So we are open for influence. We try to de-anchor ourselves from different stuff, and it's really hard because you need to challenge your mental models, and it's really painful. Going next, and then I don't know how it came, but we really paused for a couple of months, and we really try to shake this less think from ourselves and really try to think broader as we could. And then I was teaching some kind of course on systems thinking, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, what we're trying to describe on the horizontal axis is this interaction of people inside a team, or whatever you call that small unit of work. And on the vertical axis, what we're trying to describe is the level of interaction among or between those things we call teams or cells, right? So this becomes like, if you look at it from the system thinking perspective, system is a part, are parts and their interaction. So we are trying to describe interaction between different parts, individuals inside the team and teams among themselves in an organizational setting.
Yeah, and the horrible thing about that perspective that we took is that you can see that both on the horizontal and the vertical axis, it has the same word, teams.
Which interaction, actually.
Interaction, yeah. So, wow. So what is this graph showing us? Well, this is exactly the problem that we're trying to describe. So if you are improving on the horizontal axis, you are improving within the teams, your capabilities. But as they are learning more, right, it's like a child growing up. A child also first learns things about themselves, and then they are getting aware of their environment. That's also learning. So it's both very strongly related to teams, but it's different aspects of the team, where the one part, the horizontal part, is more going into the team dynamics. Is the team internally working with handoffs or not? Is it how well can they do all the actions needed to deliver a done product? And how do we organize if there are multiple teams? You cannot grow one direction without also growing in the other direction. There's a elastic band between them. You see where it's going?
This one, yeah.
And now this one. And you need to find, as a coach, you need to find in the context of the organization, you need to find how much there's work to do on the horizontal axis and how much work there is to do on the vertical axis. And you can't go too far to the right without also going a little bit up.
And going up helps you to move right.
Yeah, exactly. And that will give you the sweet spot. That's the green thing there. That's the sweet spot. And the beautiful word that my dear friend Alexey came up with for that spot, right? For the mix that you need is cohesion.
Yeah, basically, like if the vertical is still alignment, right? How much teams work with each other and how much they go in the same direction, and the horizontal is the level of autonomy, right? Of teams. If there is too little alignment and too much autonomy, basically they will run in different directions and they will be doing things independently from each other, not really taking care about the organization. So there will be no cohesion. They will be just, running in different direction, like more molecules in the gas. If there will be not enough autonomy but too much of alignment, you will squeeze them and you will force them to go in one direction. If you squeeze them too much, there will be no movement, like in a hard mass. So basically there will be too much of a cohesion. So we realized this metaphor that we're trying to create a cohesion where there is enough space in between the teams, but they still, together trying to go in one direction. And going back to less, you don't necessarily want your teams to be 100% autonomous, because what we see happen a lot in a very mature organization in that several teams jump on one goal or one item from a overall backlog and work on it together. So basically they're not autonomous anymore, but they are still, so we call it a cohesion, to highlight this difference between.
There's questions in the chat or remarks in the chat related to Dunbar numbers.
It's not. Can we move to the next question? Please.
But people are curious to understand about the Dunbar numbers.
I've heard there's no scientific meaning of a Dunbar number. The study was done on monkeys in 70s.
With bananas?
So it's like a Tuckman model. It's nice on the paper, but basically, well, John, what's behind the question? Because I know you know what I was just saying. What are you really trying to ask here? If I may.
So maybe I raise my voice now. So to me, it seems it makes a huge difference how much people are involved in this whole. So there's a huge difference if there's only a few people, because it's much easier to coordinate, to communicate in this small amount of people. And if they are, for instance, like
Dunbar people,
or less huge is up to
Dunbar number of people,
150 to 200 people.
Yes.
And what to do beyond that? So.
Exactly. And this is taking us actually to the next picture.
To the next slide. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. So in our quests, we were, of course, how is a company that has 60,000 people working for them going to implement all this? That seems like impossible, right? Or you will need something to do this, to coordinate, to make sure that people know what to do. And in our search, we came across, I think this is the time to talk about this, right, Alexey?
About what? I'm sure.
Renan-Hay model?
A little bit later, I think.
A little bit later? Because we talk about regaining non-duality here. So
a little bit later, I think. We actually have just 30 more slides, and then we can open up a bigger discussion on anything. And I will be no moderating you guys at all. But just to continue on the number of people, whatever you call it, a Dunbar number or something else, of course, right? The interaction changes over time. What we've discovered, like another discovery, is that if you are in a startup, like at a 5 guys and a dog, right? A company, the whole company is a team, and the team is a company. I mean, if there are a good team, right? They are basically a company is a team, and a team is a company. You don't have to separate. Am I currently managing an organization or a team? Because it's just one. It's the same thing. So of course, if you have a very few people, all these questions go away, and we call it non-duality because organization is a team.
It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. But then when you grow, when you add people, right, you start to split those two things into two, aspects. You end up in a world of duality where there are teams to take care. And then you need to do some team level coaching to help those teams become better teams. But on the other hand, there's this other more vertical aspect of managing your organization. And now you need to take care of this both things and find this cohesion in between, not to suppress the teams too much, but on the other hand, don't make them run in very different directions chaotically. So basically, if we would redraw the model now, like if I go back now to one of the models, maybe not this one, but this one with archetypes, the axes are not orthogonal to each other. They are more like, go in this direction. Because improving on one affects the other, improving the other affects the first one, because they are parts of the same totality of managing an organization as a team of teams, you can call it. And that's also why, actually, looking back, we don't have any archetypes in on these extreme sides of the picture, because it's really hard to find a company which doesn't care of the two axes.
They would go extinct. They would die because it doesn't have any. I mean, they will not produce anything. Yeah.
Either collapse on each other like a star, or something else happens, right? So basically, that's just a picture that we're currently looking at. And then the goal of coaching would be to regain this. And Roland has just finished reading a book called Zero Distance. That's why he put it here. A few words about the book, Roland?
No, well, yes, on the next slide. But first thing I would like to say is that with that cohesion, we're actually trying to mimic the non-dualistic situation that we had before we split the organization from the teams.
Yeah,
it's a band-aid. What really should happen, what we really want, right, is that everybody in the organization working in a team understands what needs to be done and how they can contribute to reach that goal. And for that, we organize all kinds of artificial stuff to get that done. But if there would be one big, fantastic, pulsating brain in the universe into which we can tap to understand what we need to do, and then we can just figure out amongst each other automatically, organically, what we need to do, then things will come out. So there's this idea of, well, what if we could set up an organization where, well, there is no distance anymore between the idea, the company and the teams, the user using the product. So there is no separation anymore. Then if there is no separation, we don't need to coordinate it. This sounds very vague, right? How in the hell are we going to do that? It's
a philosophical question, rather. And then we found this nice picture which kind of illustrates the challenge that we were facing, that we were trying to describe different aspects of the same phenomena, being a good company, being a team as a company. And then we just pull out this maybe two strong aspects.
Yeah, but hold on, stay.
Teams and managing teams of teams, but there might be more. And Roland has been always pushing me into, can we discover another axis and another axis? And I just know it's hard to draw multi-dimensional things in Miro. That's why I was always limiting Roland to stay with two axes. But,
so it's the tool that limits us.
But of course, you can think of many other aspects. And like, where would you put self-management? Is it a skill of a team? Is it a skill of all the teams, or is it another dimension towards you can mature, like in a Hackman model?
I want to comment a little bit on this picture before we continue. Non-duality is maybe a phenomena that you're not very aware of or working with on a daily basis. But it's like, you must have seen a little kid playing in the water, like when they're, I don't know, 1 year old, and the kid is sitting in a little bath and they're just playing with the water, and they're completely one with the water and their play, and they are so in it. There's no separation between the kid, the water, and the play and the game that they're doing. It's one. And the same thing here is in this picture. It's the beam goes into the prisma, and then there's this fan of different colors, being broken open, but they are there always at the same time. It's not the one or the other. It's not the beam or the colors. In the beam, the colors are always there. It's non-dualistic. We should learn to see things as a whole instead of what we've learned during our lives to understand what separates things from each other. That's very Newtonian, talk about the book. Well, the book says We come from an age where we had to analyze stuff and determine what is this, and if this is this, then that is something else. We had to learn how to separate things, to be more dualistic. Now the idea is that there might be a level where you get at, if you really zoom in very deeply beyond atomic level, you come into the quantum physics area. And quantum physics, I don't know if you heard of Schrödinger's cat, but that introduces that the world is a sea of possibilities waiting to emerge. And the only thing that happens around us, right, is the thing that we observe. If we don't observe it, it doesn't happen. Now that's a very challenging thought. So if I don't ask a question, the answer will not be there.
Yeah, so we just discovered a thing called quantum management. We're not going to dive into this, but there are some interesting thoughts. We don't want to sound too spiritual or too philosophical, but but there are some interesting ideas we are getting some new inspiration from.
Yes, because it brought us to a new dimension, and to look closely at, to make the thing that would be there beyond the map in the top right corner became more concrete. All of a sudden we discovered a company called Hire, and they do a organizational system modeling, and it's called Redenhoi. Redenhoi, you write it, but the Chinese go like Redenhoi. And that model kind of really expands our mental model and our brain onto what the possibilities are to have a company with 60,000 people and getting them to be operating in a way that it's more organic instead of mechanistic, because that was basically the previous ways we were trying to look at organizational design.
Yeah, so what they do practically, and we're still far from learning a lot about Hire, but from the literature that is available, we just were able to expand our understanding of what can be beyond less. Either anything better than that, still question mark if that model better, but there were some interesting aspects that we discovered. On the horizontal axis, the teams, they call them micro enterprises. They are basically small businesses, and those 10 people teams, they run business and they design, produce and sell a gadget like a new refrigerator or a microwave at Hire, and this has been scaled to like 60,000 people in China. We know it's a communist state, and question mark how much this influences. But now we know that they are also bought General Electric, right, GE, and they're also doing these pilots in America and elsewhere in Europe. So it seems like it is working beyond the field of,
They created a way to extract the principles or the ideas of the model and implement it to different countries. So they bought General Electric appliances and they saved it from dying by also chopping or by letting that organization grow into a set of entrepreneurial teams. So it's micro enterprises that they create.
And now Oliver is making a comment about cell structure orgs. So there are lots of nice researchers, especially in Germany somehow, on that topic. So it's very much goes into that. And we know Siemens is experimenting and playing with those ideas.
And think about it. Think about what happens.
We would like to learn more about that from Oliver and people who can actually see this in close proximity. But it seems like there are some, organizational ideas beyond feature teams in LESS, hopefully. Because all the feature teams I saw and I read about in LESS case studies, they were still limited to R&D feature teams. And this duality business and IT was still there. And it seems like there's a way, to bridge that gap. And on the vertical axis, it seems like, based again on the literature that was available, Hire is focusing on the scenarios of which are multiple products being used at home, which are connected to each other through Internet of Things, and they discover some scenarios of people using a set of gadgets together to create a better life environment. So it seems like there is a level beyond products, and there is a level beyond feature teams, maybe hire Hoy or something else. We hope there is more. Also reading another insight, maybe one of the last things we would like to add, reading about Ysoft. There was a talk on the last conference from a CEO of Ysoft a few years ago, and we know from people who work there, and we talked to somebody who actually is a Scrum Master at Ysoft, so it's a software development company in Czech Republic. What they did, they got rid of all the managers. Basically, it's a manager-less company, and before they try to keep the managers, and actually the less adoption didn't work because the teams were still dependent on the groups of architects, on the group of managers, and only when they realize they need to get rid of those people, so to say, they were able to make teams actually broaden the scope of work.
Yeah.
So it seems like there is another paradigm shift of going beyond manager for companies.
So the idea also at Hire was, hey, managers. So people take a lot of decisions at home and they take responsibility for their lives. But when you put them in a company where there's a manager telling them what to do, then they need to listen to that manager, and they will do things that the manager tells them, even although they disagree. So managers are stopping people from using their brains, from thinking, getting rid of the managers will force you to find something else to get the coordination done and to get the work done.
And again, we're not implying that you need to fire managers tomorrow, but it seems like it is one practice that helps several companies move up the ladder. We hope there are more practices like that. And again, we're trying just to open up a field of research where we can collect those practices. Also, question like how do you call those units? We are very much anchored with the team name in an agile space, but now some people call them cells, agents. So either any more generic term we can use for the horizontal axis, right? So that was basically what we wanted to share with you. And again, it felt like we're not creating, we're just discovering. Hopefully that makes some sense to you. And we are also developing some kind of a model, not to monetize on you guys, but rather have people who would like to join us in this research. We're welcoming you to talk to us, and together we can help you write case studies and use the ideas from Org Topologies. And later on, maybe you'll be able to teach and train and make money on those ideas, but we are not going to make money on practitioners. We would like these ideas to be free. We're pretty much happy with the research. Maybe at some point we will write a book, and this will become a source of monetization for the time we are spending on this. But we are not trying to sell you anything, but we have already 3 different companies and 3 different sets of coaches who are writing a case study and applying some ideas from Org Topologies to help them understand where they are on the map and hopefully make better org design.
Exactly. That's what it's about, right? We want to find disciples. That's a bit of a strange word maybe, but people like you, we see you guys as early adopters. There is some kind of interest in finding a way to better serve companies when we look at how they organize themselves to produce valuable stuff for customers, for users. Yeah, and if you want to join us in getting rid of safe,
It's our hidden agenda, actually, to free this world of
then
safe.
chip in,
But
guys.
don't tell anyone.
Shh. This is like the underpants story. Yeah.
No, it's not because safe is bad. It just we believe we saw so many companies got stuck in some kind of limbo state doing safe without having clear idea where they're going.
And it's very difficult to find time. Managers are not, or owners of companies, they're not busy with org design per se. I mean, that's just a means to an end. They need to satisfy stakeholders or shareholders or whatever. And maybe this map can be used as a tool to start a dialogue with the people in the organizations, and at least maybe give you an hour time or half an hour time to talk some sense, and people can see that it's not about selecting the best consultancy firm that carries in the next round of transformation with the next framework, but that they have the power themselves. It's in their hands. They just need to start applying it more consciously.
Yeah. So what we actually thought we will invite you to do after we share our insights, and is that why don't you meet each other and tell each other stories of some companies? And we've been doing this for the whole year, me and Roland, but now we have you. So why don't you try the same approach and tell each other stories of the companies that you saw, that you work with, that you heard of, that have some good cohesion, that were able to make it groove inside the teams and between the teams. And then maybe based on these stories you tell to each other, they don't have to be big long stories, but something interesting you saw in different companies. Maybe from that you can write few post-its with names of those practices, and then maybe tell it briefly to the whole group, because we're in the process of collecting those ideas, how you create that good cohesion.
Yeah, so practices that you've seen that work. Maybe of companies that had a good cohesion, that had a good balance between, well-equipped teams and understanding what needs to be created for the users. But how did they do it? And if you know how they do it, then that probably is one of the practices that, made it happen. And we'd be interested in hearing those stories of what you saw, even if you don't know how they did it. Maybe by describing what you've observed or experienced, we can together as a group determine, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's how they did it.
So I've shared a link to this Miro board. So if you like to use Miro, you can put post-its during your discussion, or you can write it somewhere and then share to the whole group. Do whatever you like. We will open up rooms. I will open up 5 rooms for 20 minutes.
How many people are we in total?
We are 15 people, and I will not assign people to rooms. That sounds too much of a command and control. We'll let you self-organize. If you all end up in one room, that's your choice. If somebody would like to spend 20 minutes alone in a dark room,
how about 3 rooms?
Yeah, I would do less rooms.
We can create 3 rooms. I'll let participants choose rooms. Now the rooms are open. If somebody doesn't have that feature in Zoom where you can pick a room, you can tell me and I will beam you into a room.
I will beam you.
Yes, everybody's back to the main hall, and yeah. So if we're interrupting good discussions, but that's also this hard role of making sure we're not losing that much time, and there's something we all can take home with us. Do you guys want to do another round of these talks in other groups, or would you move more into sharing stuff in this main room?
I would suggest to have a look at what's on the board, and maybe some people who thought like, oh, I heard something that I really want to highlight, please share it with the other groups who are not in your goal.
Yeah. Let's say if you have something very interesting that you think everybody else should also know and think of that you've been discussing in your room, that's your wonderful chance to share it.
Yes, I want to be the first. Okay, so what happened was a very funny story here, and it's in the bottom right. Actually, that agile coaches can be very disturbing because they want all kind of things and they can ruin your cohesion.
Wow.
I
Says
think
who?
that's-
Agile coach?
Oh, no, we're not, hey, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I'm not going to name any names. Somebody in my group said it, and I thought it was a very valuable remark.
Build a dam, right?
Yeah.
It's also a very Dutch way of managing environment around you, I think.
It was not a
You're
Dutch
like
person.
beavers building dams, right? All right, that's interesting. You want to go deep on that?
No.
What is exactly?
I just wanted to share, right? So maybe the majority of the people in the call are agile coaches, and we all want to do good. And especially, I remember myself, I'm going to change this organization. I'm going to really help them. And then you're pushing too hard in a certain direction, and then things, get stuck. So don't do that.
So I'll take a different approach. Since we had a conversation, I'm going to see if I can reiterate what John Coleman said.
Yes, please.
So he told a story about working in an organization, and one of I think the sort of very tactical things that he mentioned in the organization is sort of the lack of understanding of basic lean and agile principles like flow and cycle time and things like that. And that he spent time creating educational materials and basically explainers about if you have a chart of cycle time, if you see it going up, that's bad, right? And it should be even or going down. And I thought that was really insightful because, a lot of times when I was working with a mutual fund, the chief operating officer has an accounting background. He doesn't understand flow. He doesn't understand lean. He doesn't understand process, cycle efficiency. He doesn't understand any, let alone agile, right? So he looks at it from income statement, costs, balance sheet, and he's always asking, why is IT so expensive? Can't we just cut some of this, right? Without understanding the ramifications of what he would cut or why he would cut. He said, well, that's the IT manager's problem, right? Which comes back to some mentality in IT of here's your budget, manage to cost, as opposed to managing to ROI. So I thought John's idea of, you can't just say that this is going to be bad for cycle time because they won't know what that means. And that you have to create some, not only transparency around the data, but also explain and maybe re-explain the data to give them the knowledge and the controls to actually continue to maintain a system like this.
So you're saying that teaching and knowledge is something that creates this
specific things. Like, one of my complaints about large-scale Scrum is that it's not stable. So you introduce into an organization that lasts for a certain amount of time, and then it degrades for various reasons, like change in management, power struggles in the organization, people leave who are key supporters and sort of kept the flame alive. And to me, that's not a robust organizational design if it can't maintain itself. So there's a lot of forces that aren't well described that are acting against, these more amorphous network-based structures like less. And so I think until we understand the forces acting against those and have ways of buffeting or neutralizing those forces, less will continue to be something that appears in organizations underneath, a hero, and then disappears when the hero moves on and the next manager comes in because he doesn't understand the system and he just wants to appoint some VPs to go tell people what to do.
Wow. Thank you for that, because I've been struggling with that coming and going of lesson organizations being so dependent on the where you had a product or sponsor.
Yeah.
Cool stuff, man.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think that goes for all frameworks, doesn't it?
I think the more hierarchical frameworks have more staying power because if I take a seat in this hierarchy, then I understand my place, right? Which comes back to that sort of.
Yeah, but then you say because it's more prescriptive, it's more clear what's expected of your role, so it's easier to adhere to that. Yeah,
that's a great point, Eric. I think that sort of leads to what John was saying earlier about, having explainers around charts. If I don't know that I should be managing towards, quicker cycle time and more adaptability, if I'm managing to an accountant's, what an accountant thinks is important.
But then you end up with more rule-based enterprise instead of principle-based, and things become also less dynamic because all kind of things are set in stone then. Yeah, it's a balance.
It is. I think there's a control loop missing from large-scale Scrum, right? One that helps hold it in place. But you're right. If it's too rigid, then it'll become static.
Yeah, so one card we added from that room was this control room. Robin, your statement, right? Can you describe it in a few words? Was that a mechanism? Have you seen it somewhere, or it's just idea that you think it will improve?
I haven't seen it. I've seen, like, when I worked at Capital One, we had a CIO who said IT needs to get faster, and so he sponsored Lean for Business Process Improvement and Scrum for IT. That lasted, and then he left, and then it started to slip, and they went back 100% waterfall during the financial crisis. Then 2011, 2012, they went insourced everything back and tried to go agile again. And latest thing is they changed all the Scrum Masters to Agile delivery leads, and now they've fired everyone with Agile in their title. So I don't know what to make of some of these organizations, but
but there's still a tendency that you see within large agile implementations that after all everyone tries to get rid of the Scrum Masters.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Somebody else wants to share what happened in the room? Insights? I'm very intrigued by this picture of Agnieszka, Arnaud, and Simeon saying that is the best breakout ever. You guys want to share a few words of what happened in there? Because we all are jealous now.
What happened in the room?
I can imagine.
Stay in the room.
It's one way of sharing, for sure.
We weren't recorded for. Yeah.
Like anything on the topic of cohesion and stuff?
Yeah, we started with trying to find a common understanding what is good to cohesion about then, and then after that trying to understand each other when we were using certain words, so that all was already taking a part of the conversation time. But eventually we ended up with, well, the harvest, as you can read on the mirror board. And what might be interesting, at a point in your introduction talk, Roland and Alex, you mentioned something that it was not just about the organization, or an organization can be in multiple quadrants. And I think that's a very helpful perspective, because especially if organizations are really big, then they are probably not everywhere, right? And a certain business unit is further than another business unit in that same company, for instance. And then we also try to think about the statement that if you have a business unit that consists out of, well, let's say 20 teams or so, you probably need some preconditions for effective traveling on the Org Topologies map that relates to how well are teams able to do teamwork. And that could then be a precondition for effective or as fast or speedy as you like traveling on the Org Topologies map. So if I work as a team in a ineffective way, we don't understand each other, all that, then we don't have a lot of headspace probably, or cannot have a lot of influence on other teams, helping them, contributing to the greater whole. So we were discussing that amongst with structural and behavioral elements. That was just the beginning.
I actually wanted to get more about the information about the model, because I've seen it like the very, very beginning, which I didn't understood at all. And
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I told you. But so when I see the iteration, and now it's like different from the last conference that I saw it, it's really upgraded. Like I do understand it. But what Arno was saying, that when we perceive the organization, that those organizations can be like different types, different areas of organizations can be on different parts of this map, it's really like got me thinking, okay, yeah, that is true, because you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you are. So if you don't have to make like a specific part of this road of this map for the teams, like this is my place, I'm in B1, and okay, and the whole organization is there. Because I know Arnold was saying like really, really nicely, he was saying like, yeah, you know, you're in B1, you need to look around where you are. And it got me thinking, yeah, he was right. So Arnold, thank you for that. It's really like, and yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, to add to that, Agnieszka, so imagine you could walk over the Org Topologies map, and then you can jump in one of the quadrants. I now jump into A2, and then I look around, what do I see, what do I smell? What's that noise over there? What's going wrong? What's going really smooth there? Those might be nice characteristics to add to the model, and that could also bring you reasons why you shouldn't want to be there or should want to go there.
Yeah, exactly. So we had like a really interesting discussions about the model. So Alexey, Roland, you should thank Arnold, because he was really explaining me the model pretty awesome.
Oh boy.
Oh, maybe he was lying. I don't know.
I hope he does a better job than we are, because we're still.
Arnold, can we hire you for some things?
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, you're better at it than we are. So.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll leave the call now.
So what I got from this is, Arnold, that you were saying it would be good enrichment to the map to describe a little bit better what it is you observe when you're in a certain box, when you're in an archetype, what you observe, what you experience, what you feel. Is that it?
Yeah. And you can then on one hand use that not only for assessing where we are, but it's helping for the sense making, I think. Which elements do I recognize when I use it when I enter in a organization, for instance. Mm-hmm. But if you're more the manager behind his or her desk that wants to move in a certain direction, why do you want to move there in the first place? What are the characteristics you are looking for? Because you might look for certain buzzwords, and only jumping in the quadrant will show you what's behind the buzzwords. Yes. And then certain things are extremely difficult, and perhaps then you don't want that buzzword anymore.
Mm-hmm. Alexey, maybe it's good, I don't know if it's possible, if there's still time, to briefly have a look at the poster case to show a little bit more detail on what a mapping could look like, so people understand that it's not, singular, but it's like multi-team and growth. Is that possible?
Yeah, really briefly. So just to show an example how you can use Org Topologies, I work with this company called Poster. A year ago, I finished working with them, and they are on a less adoption journey. It's a relatively small company of 50 developers. And I use basically the ideas from Org Topologies to describe the org, three distinctive org designs that were either there or were discussed at this company. So this was the state of things before they've started to do the adoption. They were a bunch of teams of different size, typically small teams. So the number in brackets are the number of people in a team, and these post-its attached would mean the maturity of a team. So Y1 would mean basically it's a component team. And A2 would mean, well, it's a kind of a team that can focus on a feature, but a small, narrow feature set. So there was this set of features, and there was also a designer group with individual work that we classify as Y0. And then there were other departments that we don't describe here. And then there was the idea how they should restructure. They kind of liked less, but they also thought less was limiting because they didn't know how to fit 3 different work streams, so to say, into one less area. So they were thinking, and this is the second snapshot of an org design, it's a blueprint that they were planning with. Eventually they end up doing something different, which I will show in a minute, but there was design they were discussing for a couple of months, where there would be one area for the main core part of the product, B2B, with 4 feature teams that we can classify as B3. Basically, these teams can work on anything from a shared backlog from a LAS point of view. And then there will be 2 smaller areas, 1 team each, which we classify as A3 because they are narrowly specializing. B means they are broadly specializing. A means that they're still narrowly specializing, but they are 3, meaning they are well cross-functional, cross-component teams. And then after sometimes coaching the leadership team and all the employees, they end up, and you can read this whole details in this description, they end up basically implementing this thing. So they said, we are learning to work together. Why are we again discussing this separation? Let's all just work from one backlog. And our CEO, please be our and only one product owner. So eventually, and after that, I was with them for 6 months as the Scrum Master, actually the only Scrum Master for all these teams. They were working with the 6 featured teams from one backlog that we can classify basically as a targeting C3 on the map. And Roland, there was the overview of how you can use classification of org topologies to describe, illustrate, and then discuss and improve upon an org design. And when we say we would like you guys to contribute with some case studies, we mean exactly that. You would describe a couple of snapshots of an org design of a company and hopefully see how the company improved over time.
And this was the whole company, but this could also be one department.
It, of course, right? We will be one department if there will be too large of a company, right?
Yeah. Just to show you that, if you describe what it's like, it can be anything. It can be a mix of fruit that is ripe and rotten and green mixed together. And that immediately shows maybe the state of the organization and how, the reason for not being able to be very adaptive, and where maybe it's the best part that you can start doing some changes and where not.
So we will be closing for tonight. It's been almost 2 hours. Time flies when you're discussing org topologies. I guess that's how the saying goes. If somebody wants to share something at the end, make an announcement or whatever, that would be the right time for that.
Yeah, I've got a question, because you were presenting the model and I got it that probably I was on the flight with the team topologies as well. So I read it and I didn't feel it as well really good. So when you came up with this model of your own, it was really like, okay, now I kind of understand where we are going, but still I had this I have this question when I look at it, and there is the ultimate goal probably somewhere there, and I don't get it. I cannot put in the words. How can I talk to organization? Okay, guys, we want to be there, because I like you. The question is because John mentioned jobs to be done, and I really like it. And there is the vague in the model you present. There is the vague information. Okay, there is this. The team are great. People are collaborating, and everybody understands what there is to be delivered. But I cannot say in words, okay, what would be the ultimate goal for this?
It's really hard to say, right? It's really hard to formalize that. Like in my example with the poster, this case study I've just shown, basically there the CEO and the leadership team, they were articulating to everybody the following. They said, hey guys, we cannot work as we had been working because we're too slow. No matter how many teams we hire, you will always be behind our business needs. So what we want, they say, we want to create a company where we want to build an organization where all teams eventually will be able to add value whenever and in whichever part of the product we want you to work on. And this was actually a very rare example where I see leadership team being able to articulate their what in less that they call optimizing goal so clearly. It's a young company, it's a startup, it's run by a founder. I guess that makes it easier because these people still care and they understand how the company works. So this was their it was their perfection state. Build a company where all the teams can work on what's important, even do it together. And then I used that as basically during coaching them, and every time they would come up with some organizational design proposal, we would measure it against this goal. Like if we create, at some point they wanted to create some like a new component team around something. And then because you have this perfection goal, which is clear, you may ask, okay, we will create this component team. Is it taking us closer to that or is it going against? Is it, if it's a temporary solution because there's a very difficult hard component that somebody needs to sit on for a few months and refactor, that's all right. But if you're going to make component teams again, you're not going to reach your goal. That's actually why I don't like team topologies that much, because they kind of legalize all these component narrow teams without saying what will be the next step. So I'm not against component teams if they have a like mid-term mission to improve the code base and share the component to broader set of teams. Otherwise, they will be just a narrow team. So there was an example, Agnieszka, of some kind of a perfection state. Maybe some of you have some better examples, or maybe from larger companies. Feel free to share. Robin has shared an article from his blog, I guess.
Yeah, our message these days is sort of captured in that article, so I thought I'd share that. And it's a little bit, I guess, a little bit apocalyptic, but I think that organizations need to figure out how to adapt much more rapidly given the increasing rate of change. And so yeah. I'm coming to organizations saying, if you want to be adaptive and resilient when faced with climate change and supply chain disruptions and now AI and other kinds of things coming into your organization, you're going to need to restructure.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so disruption, speed of innovation can be some other goal. It can be anything else. But I guess survival, Robin, will be the topic of the next years, right? for IT companies. I mean, see what's happening, layoffs and whatnot. So this would be a message we can maybe help the companies, start thinking of. Something else? Anything else anybody wants to share or ask in the end? Otherwise, we have a very nice and comfy Slack channel with not so many people. I've just shared a link. Feel free to join, and we're going to continue discussing. And now Oliver, raise a hand. Oliver.
In my opinion, it really depends on. So there's no one solution fits all. So because if you look at companies like Siemens, like I am, even this is a really large company, and also in my department, we are faced with a triple innovator's dilemma. We have a very old system where we make the most money, and stability as an optimization goal is the most important thing there. So because we have market leadership, we don't need to invest much, just gain what we invested in the past. So it's really, the money is flowing from nothing. And then we have a system that is, this is the second innovators curve, I would say, that is established on the market now, but has not already the numbers of the old one. So, and there's a huge amount of people working on it, really huge, 2,000, 3,000 plus people working on it. And it's a huge mess, you can imagine. And then there's a new system where I'm more part of. And this is this disruptive more, and there we have a different optimization goal. So if you look like this, so this is not only one product. You could say, yeah, maybe in best terms of less would be 3, maybe. So it's not so easy to find really a good solution for all the 3 areas.
I think it makes sense to have a different goal for each of those products that you guys have out there. And it's always a dilemma, right? Are we going to continue to make more money on our proven product that we have already, and how much are we going to invest in this unsecure? I mean, I'm not doing the Org Topologies here, but just, this is hard income from proven technology, from things we know, and this is discovery, and where are we going? And if what's nice that you at Siemens made a very clear, conscious decision. Oh, this department, this part of the company, we're going to plot it here. It's going to just cash in on the money, not do any new crazy stuff or whatever. And there's going to be a new cash cow coming up that we need to breed for the future. And that's where we're going to put our money in, more in the discovery part. And you're not having this constant push and pull discussion without taking a decision. So I think this sounds nice, And there's a different approach needed for each of these products, if you want.
Yeah, and really does this innovator's dilemma and this zone where this overlapping. And I think until the end of the phase out of the products, there will be discussions ongoing and rambling, because sometimes this strategy is better, sometimes this. So this is really not easy. That's really difficult to do.
Cool.
Thank you, guys. I see people dropping off. I don't want you to feel bad wanting to drop off, but still trying to be polite to everybody. So I will call this call finished. Thank you so much for being with us and the valuable inputs. Let's keep researching and improving.
What are you doing?
The world. It's just my camera restarts.
Oh.
Every 30 minutes. I don't know why.
Okay.
This disruptive camera.
All right. A word of thanks also from my side. Thank you very much for showing up, spending your private time, sharing information with us, listening to our information that we want to share with you. Thank you for your valuable input on the Miro board. Yes, please do join the Slack channel. And if there's anything you want to discuss, just throw in a question. There are no dumb questions. There's only dumb people who like us, So it's always good.
Thank you, guys. All the best.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Alex. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.